Hey, and welcome to Out of Hiding, a podcast where we focus on growing in God by seeking His truth. Hosted by Dan Morrow and David Flores.
Well, we have Mr. Dan Morrow here.
Dan.
We were outside earlier. You're telling me you're preaching this weekend.
Yeah.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah?
Just here in Canton, right?
Yeah.
Exciting stuff.
Worldwide, baby.
Worldwide. Mr. Morrow.
All over the world.
He's going to sing, then he's going to preach.
Yeah, that's right. You're going to take up the offering.
I'm doing everything.
Well,
do it all.
kind of tell me something about Dan. Something we haven't heard, our listeners haven't heard. You know, kind of tell us what you want us to hear today.
Dan's got a great story. A lot of depth there.
I'm a mess.
Yeah?
What else you want to know?
We got a mess.
I'm a mess, dude. I come from a ministry family. My grandfather was a minister, pastor, pioneered a bunch of churches. Just, that whole thing. And my dad is a third generation musician, very talented. And of course, my sister and I come onto the scene, and we're in a musical family. And musical families do what musical families do, right? That was just all we did growing up, is music. And some kind of ministry to go along with it.
Told you she wouldn't give me the vibe.
Do it all the way underneath there.
You ain't take no. So that was kind of how I grew up. I went to public school. I went to Athens. I went to Athens schools. I rode a bus a lot. Just kind of had an average childhood. We didn't have any money, so I spent a lot of time alone in the woods. I did lots of fishing. Oh yeah, I just grew up a kid alone in the woods. I spent a lot of time with a fishing pole and a dog, and the land we lived on backed up to, lots of land. It was just heavily wooded bottomlands. So I grew up outdoors. Grew up playing music. I started playing drums at church when I was 12, and I've always just really loved God. But there was a time where I wondered how much it was authentic and how much was just put on me. I'm kind of rebellious in nature, if I'm just being open with you guys. I'm just rebellious in nature. My dad hated if I wore my hat backwards, so what did I do? I wore my hat backwards everywhere I went. Just that kind of thing. I still struggle with that rebellious. I think God's done a lot of work on me, and I've done a lot of work on myself to try to get rid of that. But there's that whole side of things. But
how'd you get your start on the drums? This is a fun story. Like, what'd you play?
So we'd grown up in church. We went to Trinity, which is Word of Victory, when I was a little kid. And that, I don't know what happened there. My parents never actually said why they left. But then we went to a string of Baptist churches, which we settled at a church called Ash Baptist Church. There's over in close to Merson, which is weird, I know. But the pastor there, his name was Pastor Randy. Awesome dude, just loved God. And the youth group was cool. We played ping pong, and I don't know, it was a cool place to connect. That wasn't, the norm for my family. My family wasn't Baptist. My mom kind of grew up that way, but anyway. So Dad's friend decides to move to Athens and start a church, and he wants Dad to come be a part. So Dad takes the family, and we go there, and it's a church called Athens Christian Center, and of course they want my dad to be the worship pastor, so he does, and he's just him and a guitar, and my mom singing for a bit, and band started to grow, and he tells me that I'm going to play drums, and my sister's going to play keys. So I'm like, sweet. I always wanted to play drums, but we were so broke. My dad just went to the pawn shop and bought a Boss DR10 Dr. Rhythm drum machine, and it's a little box like this big, and it has pads on it. And so he set that up on stage. And that's how I played drums. And I played drums like that for a long time. And he finally comes one day and he's like, all right, we're going to get you a new drum set. And I'm like, Oh yeah, here we go.
Yep.
So we go to Guitar Center, and he buys me an Alesis drum machine.
Step up.
So the Alesis actually had toms. You know, the DR10 just had like a clap noise, a bass drum, a snare, cymbals, and a hi-hat. So
Yeah.
it was pretty basic. And man, I played that drum machine until it wore all of the wording off the pad. I mean, it just wore down to nothing. It was I trashed it. So Dad went and got a loan and bought a Roland set of drums. So then I went from drum machine to an E-kit.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never even played acoustic drums, and just never even played a kit.
That's it.
So one Sunday I'm playing the drum machine, the next Sunday I'm playing a kit, and that was how I started.
I bet you figured it out.
Yeah, I started, and I did that. I was a drummer in church till my parents moved us to Rhema, and you know, I got into guitar. I actually wanted to play guitar. That's what I really always loved, but the church needed a drummer, so that's what I did. But I still love to play drums to this day. But
And Rhema, for those listening, was the huge mega church up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, years and years and years ago. Ministry school,
Kenneth
all that
Hagin,
kind of stuff. Kenneth Hagin.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know, Kenneth Hagin Sr. was there when we were there. It was
Yeah.
kind of his last years. It was cool. I hated my mom and dad because at this time, I'm 15 years old. I'm about to drive. All my friends that I grew up in church with, grew up, you know, in school, and then my parents pulled us out to homeschool us. They homeschooled us at home one year in prep to get us ready to go to Rhema with them. And we got to Rhema. My parents enrolled us in a school called American School, and it was a correspondence school out of Lansing, Illinois. And I didn't know anything about it, but I remember getting the welcome packet in the mail, and it was like a biology book. It was a psychology book.
Yeah.
And then it was a letter from the dean of the school, and it just says, hey, here's some people you may know that have graduated from here. Because I thought, man, what are my parents doing? You know, what are we doing? And it was like Andre Agassi was on there. Vanilla Ice was on there. There was a bunch of actors and sports people.
Yeah.
This is the school that they used because it was accredited.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be a really good education, and it's still in today. But there was no help. There was nothing. You read the book. You did the test. You could cheat, I guess, but there wasn't internet back then, so
Sure.
it was hard. So I would mail in my tests. The teachers would grade them, send them back. So that's how I ended up finishing high school. But I worked full time. My parents were so flat broke. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
they were going to school full time at Rhema, trying to get their degree. And
Well, how was that, Dan? Like going from Athens, Texas, small town East Texas, all that kind of stuff. Now you're in Tulsa, Oklahoma, at this mega church.
I was there a week and I ran away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was so mad at my parents. My dad, we moved in a duplex, and I'm a country kid. I've never had a neighbor. We have neighbors right next door. It was culture shock, culture overload. And Rhema is in their heyday at this time. So their church had a big balcony. I remember, I think the membership was over 10,000.
Yeah. Which I mean, that's still huge for today, but especially back then, that was like unheard of.
They had a shield on top of the building that spun 24 hours a day that said faith. And then they had the park and then the NRC, and they had all this stuff. And we lived right across the street from the NRC, which is, I walked. I didn't have a vehicle. But it was tough. I walked. I remember the first time my parents physically walked us to youth because they knew we wouldn't go.
Yeah.
And we walked in there, and it's just I'd never even seen a church of over 100.
Mm-hmm.
And I walk into a youth group, and there's like 700 kids in there, and I'm like,
what is going on?
Anxiety through the roof.
Yeah.
And the moment, of course, I said anything, they immediately mocked me because my Texas accent. I had an East Texas accent, real bad.
How many hacky sacks were around?
I became a hacky sack master.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yep.
But that was way before then.
Yeah.
Anyway, we just didn't fit in.
Yeah.
We would show up for a while. They ended up having this big outdoor bash, and there was like 1,500 kids there, and they had a big stage set up outside, band just jamming, just having fun. And I ended up meeting a couple of girls that came up, and we just started talking. And that one girl became my girlfriend, and she ends up setting up a birthday party for my 16th birthday and inviting a bunch of people. I didn't have any friends, so she just invited her people she knew from youth group. I ended up meeting a guy named Caleb, who's still today like a brother. We became best friends, and we had been friends. We still talk 2 or 3 times a day, or a week.
Yeah.
Currently,
I've never met him.
No,
I hear about him all the time.
Yeah, him and I are still really, really close. He's a great guy. He ended up graduating from Rhema years later and going back to school anyway. But I met him, and that was when I started to like Tulsa a little bit. And then the worship team for the youth opened auditions. And I know I've told this story a couple times I've preached. I've said a little bit about the story. But this story was really hard. It was a hard hill to overcome because just from where I grew up, I was kind of, just thrust into the worship. Then you go up there and everything is production. Mm-hmm. And I thought there's no way we're going to make it. But we decided to audition anyway. We waited in line forever. And I got on the drums and I literally went kick, snare, pa. And he goes, stop. His name was Rick Salonen. And he just had that producer vibe. Just the guy had a master's degree in music, I believe. Phenomenal musician. Could grab anything on stage and play it. And then he had a personality that was just as big and wide as... He was just awesome.
Yeah.
And he goes, that's enough. Do you play anything else? And I was like, well, I play guitar. And he goes, all right, let me hear it. And at this time, all I had done was been practicing the drums. I was drumming in a little jazz or a blues cover band, and I was just drumming every day. And he's like, well, play me something. And I had no idea what to play on guitar because I hadn't played. So I ended up playing what I knew, and that was Boston. I played the opening riff to More Than a Feeling. And he's like, did you just play me Boston? And I was like, yes, sir. Is that bad?
Are y'all going to kick me out of here?
Yeah. I was like, oh, I'm going to hell now. The worship guy's going to. And anyway, he goes, all right, we'll let you know. So as I'm leaving, I'm passing my sister coming in for her audition, and she's auditioning for keys. She looks at me with the face of like, how'd it go? Mm-hmm. And I was like, no. I walked out. I'm like, wasn't good. So we went home. She came out feeling the same way. She's like, it wasn't good. We're not going to make it. So my sister and I both went home, and it was us against our parents. So my bedroom, by the way, was 8 foot by 7 feet. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It was just big enough for a twin bed to stick against the wall, and then I had a little room to
stand up and walk? Yes,
but they didn't have a bed when I first got there. So I slept on a little couch that folded out. Mm-hmm. So by about third month, I couldn't even hardly walk in the mornings because my back was just jacked.
Yeah.
Anyway, my sister and I go in our room, and we go into our self-deprecating kick. We start just mocking everything. And I hear my dad answer the phone in there in the living room, and it's Rick. And he's like, hey, he wants both of you guys on the team. You made it. We're like, what? And that changed everything. We went from nobodies to just everybody.
Yeah.
Wanted to hang out.
Yeah,
and
they see you.
Yeah, they saw us on the stage and introduced me to the production side. I was with the top tier. They had a drummer named Josh. One of the best drummers I'd ever been around in my life. That's why when I played the 2 beats, he had no interest in me because they already had a drummer.
Yeah.
And I thought it was that I was bad. It had nothing to do with that. It's just they had a fantastic drummer.
Yeah, this wasn't a drum tryout.
No, and so I learned a lot about just how to conduct a music practice because they did it professionally. They did it so well. And Rick, he would get out there and just be like, pump us up. Hey, I want a garage ending right here. Big cymbals. Shh, come on, guitar. Yeah. Just awesome guy just to develop what we were and help our tool bag, mine and my sisters both. Taught us how to do transitions, taught us how to do worship.
Yeah.
On a professional scale.
Absolutely.
And now that's what you do here, right?
Well, that's what I started doing here, yeah.
Yeah.
But I came back from Rhema, here we go again, 2.5 years later. I'm plugged in. I've got friends. I've got a serious girlfriend. My plan is to stay there. My dad's like, nope. I'm like, I'm 18. You ain't 18 yet. And I wasn't. Mm-hmm. I moved back right before my 18th birthday, and I couldn't. He wouldn't let me. I wanted to go to ORU and maybe go to Rhema, stay there with my girlfriend, Caleb, and just play music and do that. Anyway, that didn't happen, so I moved back. And the church we came back to was just, it was nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It was dead, So I asked the pastor, I was like, hey, can we start some kind of youth thing? He's like, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So we just started worship. Christy and I would get in there. We would start playing music. It was just us two to start. And all of a sudden, kids start showing up. And then wasn't long. We had more band members. Started showing up. And it wasn't no time, like maybe 6-8 months. We had displaced the Wednesday night church service. They were meeting in the annex room where we started, and we had to meet in the main sanctuary because we had 50, 60 kids.
Yeah.
And that was just going really well.
Mm.
Had a fun time with that, and then they bounced me all around. I mean, any kind of ministry you can possibly think of.
Yeah.
They ended up removing me from that and put me in children's ministry, me and Don. This was a while later, but that was rough.
Mm-hmm. It's
But
a big dent. It's a difference.
I had little kids, so
Yeah.
it made a little sense.
Yeah.
But my heart, I always loved youth, and I really loved worship. So that's where I met Dawn. I mean, I had met her at various things, but that's where I got to know her. She came up one night, and I was packing up my stuff, and she's like,
Hey, Dan.
you need help?
Can I put this guitar?
And I was like, yeah, that woman hadn't helped me a day since then. I was like, she got me, though, She got me
yeah.
a singer.
Absolutely.
You already kind of heard that on her podcast. Y'all want to hear that story, go back and listen to her podcast. But
So then you, that was your young life. Now I want to hear kind of your life today. Like, I know we're transitioning way ahead of time, but I know I kind of briefly we were talking about you fixing to preach on Sunday. What goes into you? Like, what do you do to get ready for a message to preach on Sunday? Because I feel like it's a pretty big deal. Like, so what does that look like? How much in advance do you know you're preaching? Like, what does all that look like? Can you share that?
yeah, that's kind of boring, but I'll share it. I mean, I preached back then, and it was a different process than it is today. A lot of that has to do with just the way God molds you along life in your journey. The way I prepped then, I didn't have a lot of wisdom. I didn't have a lot of journey. It was, I just, got in the Word, and I just tried to put the pieces together and pray in the Spirit and pray that He guides me. And I would come out with this flimsy, thin, shallow message, right, that I would do. And I did the best I could with what I had.
Absolutely.
And God blessed it. Well, then you hit this other kind of paradigm where you kind of think you got wisdom, and you start to try to put that in there, and then God almost is like, He resists that because there's a level of pride there. And so currently, my method is, if Pastor Adam goes, hey, will you preach? I just simply say yes. And then I go, what do you want? And he'll either say, I want this, or he'll say, I don't care. And if he says, I want this, then I just go and I get on my knees and I pray that He has His way, His will. Mm-hmm. And then I just try to stay real sensitive to His voice. And
your messages are very real. When you preach on Sunday, you don't, it's not like something I've ever seen. Like you'll throw, you'll kind of throw yourself under the bus, in a lot of situations. You'll be like, I did this, and you'll like visually show the things of like your past and all the things that you kind of went through, or you'll have people come on stage and you're very visual, very real. Like, obviously that wasn't something you just do overnight. Is that part of your like testimony, like the teaching?
Yeah.
Like,
so to me, my testimony is the best testimony. It's the best testimony that God ever did. It's the most real testimony that God ever did. It's I've seen more transformation in my own life than I have in anybody else's. And I see transformation in it, but in the heart of me, I always even doubt, are they telling the truth? Or are they just playing the part? Because growing up in the church ministry, you see tons of cats that play the part. They know the Christianese. They know the things to say. They know how to fit in. They know how to make you think that they're just doing good. And I lived that for so long and come under that so long that when I broke free of that and I truly got to know who God is, All I want to do is be me. And I want to illustrate the radical transformation that takes place when you seek him first. And it's relational. It's not performance in nature. It is 100% relational. And that's what God put on display in my life. Because like I said, I'm not lying. I'm a mess. My personality type is a mess. One of the reasons I do that on stage, I'm aggressive in nature. I asked Adam, I was like, hit me straight, boss. Where am I? He's like, you're a little aggressive.
Just a little.
And he's right. I am a little aggressive. I do everything at 1,000%. And I have a hard time not doing that.
Hey, say this though, Dan, because you just said something there that you just briefly mentioned, but you said some gold there. You said, I just want to be me.
Yeah.
Like, because in the world of paid ministry staff, whatever, not even just that level, but even others, there's always like, we find somebody we like and we try to be that person. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like we find somebody that speaks really well and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to try to be that person when I get up there to share or I get up there to preach and all that kind of stuff. And I'm under the influence that, there's great things that you can take from people, but you never can take the person. You know what I'm saying? And what you said about, I just want to be me. I think that's where it's genuine. I think that's where the anointing is. I think that's where God's breath just breathes upon it and people's lives are touched because of it. What do you think what does that mean to you when you say, I just want to be me up there?
Well, I want to be the me that God transformed.
Yeah.
I just want to be that because that is the greatest show of what God can do.
Yeah.
If I fake or try to emulate someone else, it takes away from the true miracle. The miracle took place in me.
Sure. Yep.
And so I have to be true to that and just be me because that's the way God made me. God made me aggressive. Now, is it my job to hone that and be responsible with it? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But there's an edge to my personality that I think that God made me that way.
Absolutely.
It's important.
You have to. I'll never forget. I was in a meeting when I lived up in Spokane, and I got this meeting with the senior pastor of the biggest church in Spokane. Senior pastor. I'm sitting there going, oh, what am I going to ask this guy? Like, what am I even doing in here? But we had some things to talk about, all that kind of stuff. And so I just stopped him because he had been the pastor of this church for 30 years. And for the first 10 to 12 years, they were just like kind of getting by, just barely making it, a couple hundred people showing up, all that kind of thing. And then it just exploded. We're talking 5,000-6,000 people. And so I was like, I want to know what this guy did. And so I asked him, I said, how did you, for 10 to 12 years, this is what you had. And then all of a sudden, to somebody just looking at it, whatever, from the outside, it just popped. It just exploded. Like, what happened? What'd you do? I'll never forget what he said. He said, I stopped trying to be everybody else, and I just became me. And he named all these big, I stopped trying to be Billy Graham. Yeah. I stopped trying to be, all the people that names that we see today. I stopped trying to be Stephen Furtick. I stopped trying to be Michael Todd. I stopped trying to be, whatever it is. And I was just me. And he goes, God blessed it.
It's so countercultural because, like, if you and I go fishing and you got a spinnerbait and I'm throwing a worm and all of a sudden I start catching fish, what is your natural inclination? Is to let me cut this thing off and put that worm on there so I can get in the game.
Absolutely.
But that's not God's way. That's a very humanistic way to look at it in my humble opinion. But it ain't easy being you. It ain't easy being comfortable in the skin you're in sometimes, unless you've got a revelation of who you are.
Yeah. Yep.
There's definitely it's like a journey, it's like climbing a mountain. You get there and it's so hard to be you. I don't want to be me because me's a loser. Me is a dumb East Texas kid that has nothing to offer. But if I emulate someone else, I can make my way in there. If I play drum, that's part of the reason I struggled so much with perfectionism in music. Is because I saw immediately that if I was good at music, people would accept me. Mm-hmm. And so now I still want to bring that to the table subconsciously. I have to constantly battle that.
You automatically know if they hear you sing, play the guitar. You're their friend.
That's it. I'm in.
Yeah.
And so that's manipulative.
Yep.
You know, the very thing that could be ministry becomes a manipulative tool from me on my side, and which is very dangerous. And that's where God's been dealing with me for the last year. He's been revealing all the just kid stuff. I would call that kid stuff. That there's a grace for that for a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then you have to mature. You have
Yeah.
to grow out of it. And that's where God's had me. He's had me growing out of it. He's had me having hard talks and with hard people.
They talk about, right? When I was a child, I thought as a child, but you know, like there's this growing up aspect to not just faith, but identity too.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
Like growing up, like who am I really? Discovering who God's created me to be. I've seen it in your life. Well, I've known you. How long have I known you, Dan? 8, 9 years, something like that.
9 years.
9 years. 9 years, and we met hanging out, listening to live music, all that kind of stuff, and started coming to the church just a little bit after that, and got to hear your story and be around you and all that kind of stuff, and it's been probably one of the greatest joys of my life, watching what God has done in your life. You know what I'm saying? I mean, because it's just, you just said, like, it's your testimony. It's the greatest story ever told, right?
It is.
It's the greatest story ever told.
100%. It's
Yeah.
no one else's story tops mine, in my opinion, because God revealed Himself in that
Yeah.
at a depth. Nobody else's story could touch me that way. It makes me cry and it gets me emotional. But in the heart of it, there's always that thought: are they telling the truth? Or are they just sensationalizing this?
Absolutely.
You know.
Yeah.
But I know in my life.
I mean, think about it. Like 9 years ago when we met, you know, hanging out. Did you ever think you were going to be the executive pastor at Radiant Church?
Not no, but heck no. You know, just.
But I bet there was some sort of, maybe you didn't even know at the time, it was God. There's some sort of buried underneath all the other stuff was that desire to do something.
There's always been that desire. I've wanted to be in the ministry my entire life. Like, I remember that vivid as I was at church camp, and I remember the guy speaking up there was just talking about, some of you, God has laid a desire for ministry, and I just remember that resonating. In fact, that was my first career path. I tried to do that, but you know, I got married so young and didn't have any money, and the door didn't open.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was timing. It was a timing thing.
Yeah, and I also see in your story, though, just faithful. I mean, obviously, we all have our stuff, right? But faithful in the seasons we're in, you know, and God opening doors to next seasons and whatever. And then eventually we look up and we go, oh, my gosh.
Part of the growing up process, this is what I've been teaching the worship team, and I've been teaching the youth, and I've been teaching whoever listens to me. They want to hear what I've got to say. This is what I'm going to tell you. The growing up process looks like this: when God is behind it, you don't have to
Manipulate it.
You don't have to manipulate. You don't have to get your time. I didn't ask to be on the worship team. I didn't even put all this together until recently. But looking back, I didn't ask to be on the worship team. Somebody came and said, "Hey, would you?" I didn't ask to be executive pastor. I didn't ask. I just sat quietly here, serving Him, faithful as I could possibly be. And then every time a door opened, I simply just said, "Okay." And He just did it for me. And that's hard to do.
Yeah, let's talk about this.
Culture teaches you that you must insert yourself.
Self-promote.
Self-promote. Let's do passive-aggressive promotion, like, well, I'll hold up on that one, but...
I already know where you're going.
You know, it's things like that we do to manipulate. We try to get ourselves, we insert ourselves maybe into a circle. Maybe I'm in the lobby, and I get within earshot, and I start to talk about music with someone on purpose. That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Or whatever it may be.
Sure. Like, I mean, it's the idea that, yeah, I'm gifted and I'm talented. You know, I've got some of that on the inside of me. Men look to men for promotion. That is not the way of the kingdom. God promotes.
Yep.
Right?
100% of the time.
God is the one that opens the doors. God's the one that takes us from one season into the next. And he'll use people to do that, to see that. But it's never about us going, hey, you should have me, whatever. That makes me cringe. That makes me so cringe when I even just I can even almost feel it in somebody. You know what I'm saying? I'm like,
Yeah.
no, because you don't understand yet. It's not about me trying to get a position. It's about me being faithful and serving. And if God sees fit, He's going to open doors.
That's so countercultural, man. It just is that way. And that's the maturing.
Yeah.
Kids, what do kids do whenever you're in the room with them? They run up and jump in your lap. They pull on your head and they shake you around. They insert themselves into the situation. Well, we tend to do that in the godly things as we want to get in ministry. Then we start trying to insert ourselves, and and it's very it's manipulative at the end of the day. It's just taking away that man does things and trying to put it in the way God, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, and it's teaching us the whole process, because I see so many people. I've been guilty of it in the past, all that kind of stuff of trying to skip a season, trying to skip a field. What I mean by a field, David's out in the field being faithful. Nobody else even knows he's there. God knows he's there. Nobody else does, basically, except for his dad. And he's just been overlooked, but there he is, just staying faithful. And man, there's something inside, I think, a lot of us that want to skip that season. They want to go, I'm ready. Put me in. I got it. I got the goods.
That season is so necessary, but it's so hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
Yeah. How was David? I mean, I know this is a story we all know, but how was David able to take out Goliath? Because he's already taken out.
He did the work.
Mm-hmm.
How can you do 100 push-ups? You start with one, and you keep building up until one day you can do 100. It's the same way. You want to do something amazing with God. You have to start at the beginning and then just be consistent.
Yeah.
And faithful.
Just stay there. Just stay faithful. Just do with everything you got.
Put your feet. You've asked me to do some stuff that I haven't wanted to do, to be honest.
Sure.
But it was some of the best stuff ever, because it was the test. Am I really faithful? Mm-hmm. Or am I just full of crap? Mm-hmm. Am I being manipulative in a way?
Sure.
And
I don't know, I see that in your story, Dan. I see that in your story, because just here at Radiant, when COVID happened, so you were serving on the worship team, doing all that, kind of you were really helping at that point on the worship team. COVID happens, and then it's like, oh man, I have this thing inside of me that God says, don't push the brakes, push the gas.
I remember that talk.
I don't even know what that means, because we don't have anything at the time.
Yeah.
Somebody gave us a camera.
Yep. I remember.
And you figured out, here's what we can live produce it, all this kind of stuff, man. We can put it out, all these kind of things. And you were just faithful in that season. You were never once in front of the camera. You were always behind it, pulling all the levers, doing all the things.
Yeah.
We went down to the beach. You're literally in the RV putting together the service while everybody else is hanging out.
Yeah, edited that service. I forgot about that.
And we live streamed it from there. But I mentioned all that because COVID was a time at Radiant that really helped us grow, right? Like that's very different than a lot of pastors that I know around the country. But God used it for us to grow, and your skills, giftings, all that kind of stuff were so much happening behind the scene to pull all this off. And people don't see that. They see you now, and they go, "Man, must be nice."
Yeah, catapulted to the top. Yeah, right, man.
From the bottom down.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just picky with that one.
How do you avoid the burnout? Like because every day you're here, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're helping with the media. How do you avoid getting burnt out?
You avoid the burnout the same way you avoid the other stuff, and that's by literally knowing who you are and understanding where you're weak, where you're strong, understanding who you are with Him, and then get together with your closest circle and go talk. Mm-hmm. If I'm feeling the slightest bit burnout, I will make this man have back porch time with me, and we'll talk through it. Mm-hmm. And I try to open the door for Adam to always be brazenly honest with me, because I love correction. He's going to see me burn out before I see me burn out, because my pride is going to limit. It always tries to limit your objective view of yourself. But Adam, he sees me every day. So if he says, Dan, how you doing? What's going on? I know that I have to stop right there and go, okay, wait a minute. He's seeing something that I'm not seeing. Let's check it out. Let's be intentional here to take inventory of where we are, because everybody could get burned out, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do the right things, you can avoid burnout. You really can. And mirror Jesus' ministry. Jesus went hard, and then he rested hard.
Mm-hmm.
Then he went hard again, and then he rested hard. It was just this really beautiful cycle.
Well, nobody likes to talk about burnouts.
No, but
they like to put that face on.
Absolutely.
You know?
I'm tough. I'm tougher than anybody thinks I am. I can keep going. I can grind it out until you can't. And then you're like, I'm empty. I'm pissed.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like, nobody, whatever it is. And then it's like, here we go.
Everyone thinks I'm pretty tough because I'm a doer and I get lots of stuff done. You want to see, my wife has a nickname for me I can't say on this podcast, but it's something baby Dan. That's what she calls me. You want to see a strong man turn sour and act like a baby on a dime? Burn me out. Mm-hmm. Make me feel used. I will go to the depths. Mm-hmm. It's embarrassing to admit.
Yeah.
Adam seen me do it. Dawn has seen me do it. Like, my close circle has seen me go, and they're all going, what in the world? How did you go from here to here?
It wasn't overnight. It was, you know what I'm saying?
No.
I think it also speaks to the relationship, though, too. We spent time doing that. We spent time diligently having hard conversations. We both ways, you know. You got to have people you can talk to. Ministry you can be in front of thousands of people and still feel so lonely inside. Mm-hmm. You know, that whatever that is. Jesus makes a great statement. Let your yes be yes, let your no be no. People don't like no.
They don't like no, and I tell you, there's definitely a curve, and it's exponential. You know, it's not linear. In the beginning, God plants a seed. Pastor Adam is obedient. He starts his thing. We show up. We're doing the thing, and it's small. And at that point, we're going, hey, please come help. Please come help. Please help. Well, then popularity grows. Things happen. It gets blessed. And then what happens is we start to attract the wolves. And then the wolves come in. And the wolves are the ones that will actually burn you out. Because the wolves are so clever. They come in. They have their agendas. They have their things. And as a group, if we're not all protecting the group from the wolves come in and they stir up dissension. And then the burnout happens. Church blows up. And what God created great is now fragmented and hurt. Mm-hmm. And it always starts really, really small with just allowing. And that's what I told the worship team on Sunday. I said, you allow any kind of the selfish behavior. And you don't have to be mean. You don't have to be ruthless. You don't have to be anything. You have to be honest. Yeah. And that, a lot of times that just looks like this. Hey, if we're at practice and you sense a bad attitude, stop. Mm-hmm. Stop right now. Come. Let's pray together. It's very obvious you are upset. I don't know why you're upset, but let's pray together as a team. Let's get this right. Because if you allow that little thing right there, it goes into the slippery slope of just a mess. And then all of a sudden, 5-6 months or a year later, you know, people are quitting your worship team unannounced, and they're mad, and they're leaving gone. They're going to start their own church. They're doing all their own things.
Yeah. And
a lot of that just comes from not recognizing those little things up front. And that's why I like it here so much. Adam truly does care more about me than he does this ministry. And I feel the exact same way. I've told him many a times when he said, let's move forward, let's push in COVID. I was like, bro, let's slam the floor. Let's put the gas pedal on the floor. I'll put everything I got into this thing. And to this day still, I will put everything I got into this thing. If we lose it all, I will lose it all with him. I don't care. Because it's deeper, it's bigger, it's larger. It's bigger than me, and it's bigger than Adam.
Yep.
And that's how I avoid it.
Yeah, it was cool. I'm going to share a little story. So I was at AutoZone. I kind of told you about this. I was getting a new battery for Lacey's car, and it was randomly. I was like, I'm going to go get it tonight. And I went to AutoZone, got a battery. This guy helped me, and we got to talking, and I got to pray over him, all that good stuff. But before I got to, he was talking about churches, and I brought up Radiant. But somebody in Radiant already touched him.
Mm.
He already said, "Oh yeah, I already had somebody come by from Radiant and
Hitting them
inviting
streets.
them, and it's just like we got an army,
Yeah.
and it's just cool to be a
Yeah.
part of."
Man, what God is building, has built up until this point here. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome. People growing, people really catching the fire. Like the idea that Jesus transforms lives, and like really allowing Jesus to transform my life. That's what I see here at Radiant. It's really happening, guys. We're really doing it.
We're really doing it here.
What is going on?
We're really doing it.
Well, what's your hope, Dan? What's your hope for the listener?
Man, my hope for everybody, listeners, my hope is that you understand how to pursue Him personally. This journey didn't start because of Radiant or because I got this journey. At some point, I had to establish the fact that I am a lost sheep that has to have a shepherd. I have to be connected to Him, and it has to be real.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not, the guy that's not connected to Him is a real jerk and a real mess and a real just not good person. My kids have all seen that. My wife has seen that. My friends have seen that. I literally just can't afford to not be connected to Him. And truthfully, you can't either. You cannot afford to not be connected to Him because we're just lost sheep.
Mm-hmm.
Just trying to make it through life. And life's hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I love it. Stay connected. That's right. The branches in the vine.
That's
I
it.
love it.
It's profound, guys.
It is. But it is, though, right?
It's simplistic, and that's what makes it profound.
Yep.
It's like stay connected.
Yeah.
Bring Jesus in on your life.
Mm-hmm.
You know how many times I brought Jesus in, slobbering drunk, not knowing where I'm going, and I'm just like, okay, Jesus, here I am. I'm a mess. I'm drunk. I'm hurting. What do? I want to work for you, and Him just loving on me,
Mm-hmm.
and
I changed that from I used to have Jesus used to be my emergency contact, and I switched it from the emergency contact to actually. It's like I'm gonna build a relationship with this emergency contact, and then life has been beautiful ever since then. But that's for the longest. That's all He's ever been for me was that emergency contact. Like, hey, I'm in a bad spot.
Absolutely.
Help!
Hey,
I
I'll
need
never
some
do
guidance,
it again.
Dial up emergency contact real quick. So, yeah. Well,
Awesome.
what you got? What you got planned for Easter? This is your chance to.
When's this episode drop?
next Wednesday.
Okay. So we got a few days till Easter.
I'm throwing the alley-oop up.
Let's go. Everybody out there, pick somebody, pray for somebody, and then have the courage to go bring them with you. I just feel that this year. Every year we preach this, but I so feel it this year. Go grab one. Go grab one. That one person that you know that you would love to have sitting next to you in an Easter service. That one person that you know is extremely broken right now, that needs to hear the greatest news to ever hit earth. Like go grab that one that even their life seems like they're just crushing it and killing it, but you know the main thing's missing. Go grab the one. Tell them, come sit with me on Easter.
This Sunday, right? 5 services.
Saturday night.
Canton, Saturday night.
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock Saturday night in Canton. And then 9 and 11 in Wills Point. And then 8:30, 10 regular times in Canton Sunday morning.
Hope to see you guys there.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Invite
Me too.
somebody. That's your hope. Invite somebody.
That's right.
Yep.
See ya.
Bye.